On a humid evening in rural Indiana, two operators stood at the entrance of a place most investors would not be caught dead buying. A tired manufactured housing community, 96 lots, a crooked entry sign, a gravel road full of potholes, a dozen empty weed, choked lots, and a handful of beat-up homes the park itself owned. People call places like this trailer parks, and they say the word like an insult. The operators paid $2.15 million for it. And they were thrilled to. 24 months later, that same overlooked, mocked, unglamorous property sold for $6.05 million, generating a net profit of close to $3.8 million. They did not gentrify it. They did not rebuild it. They simply ran it like a real business for the first time in decades. In the next 30 minutes, we are going to open this deal. Every number, every line of the capital stack, every operational move, every mistake, anatomy of the deal. Here is how this episode is structured. Fadend. Nah ha ha. Start with the question the cold open begs. Why would a serious investor be thrilled to buy a property the rest of the world mocks? The answer starts with what you are actually buying because it is genuinely unusual. In a manufactured housing community, the operator typically owns the land, the roads, the utility infrastructure, and the empty lots. But the operator usually does not own the homes. The residents own their own homes. They simply rent the lot, the patch of ground their home sits on, from the community. So the operator's core business is not renting out houses. It is renting out land. And renting land has a remarkable property. The land needs almost nothing. No kitchens to remodel, no roofs to replace, no appliances to fix, no flooring to turn between tenants. The resident maintains the home because the resident owns the home. Ha-ho, fadei. That single fact drives everything investors love about this asset class. Reason 1. The operating expenses are low and they stay low because you are maintaining land and gravel roads, not 96 houses. Reason 2. Tenants are extraordinarily stable. Think about it. A resident owns a home that physically sits on your lot. Moving out does not mean packing a truck. It means physically relocating an entire house, which can cost many thousands of dollars and is genuinely difficult. So residents almost never leave. Turnover in a manufactured housing community is a fraction of what an apartment complex sees. Fai. Da. Reason 3, and this is the one that makes the asset class genuinely powerful. The supply is shrinking. Across the country, almost no new manufactured housing communities are being built. Local opposition, zoning resistance, and the simple stigma in the cold open mean cities rarely approve new ones. Meanwhile, existing communities are steadily being closed and redeveloped into other uses. So you have a form of housing where demand is steady or rising. It is some of the most genuinely affordable housing in America, while the total supply slowly and permanently declines. Steady demand, shrinking supply. That is the quiet engine underneath every number in this episode. The thing people mock is, to an investor, a scarce and defensible asset. Height warten. Now, the specific property. But first, one more concept, the lot rent model, because the entire turnaround runs on it. Lot rent is exactly what it sounds like. Every occupied lot pays the community a monthly lot rent, the rent for the ground the home occupies. When the operators analyzed this park, the lot rent was $255 a month. Comparable, well-run manufactured housing communities in the same rural region were charging lot rents of around $365. The previous owner had not raised the lot rent in over a decade. So there was a roughly $110 per lot per minute onth gap between what this park charged and what the market charged, and that gap was the single largest opportunity in the deal. Now, the asset itself. A manufactured housing community on about 18 acres of rural Indiana land. 96 total lots. When the operators bought it, the occupancy picture was messy, and messy is exactly what creates opportunity. Of the 96 lots, 68 were occupied by resident-owned homes paying lot rent. 16 lots were occupied by old homes the park itself owned and rented out as whole units. And 12 lots were simply vacant, empty pads with utility hookups and no home on them. Dabend. Tate. Pause on those three categories because the turnaround plan addresses each one differently. The 68 resident-owned lots were paying lot rent, but the below-market lot rent, the 16 park-owned homes were a headache. The operators were stuck being landlords of 16 aging houses, with all the repair calls that brings, which is exactly the business this asset class is supposed to let you avoid. And the 12 vacant lots were pure dead weight. Infrastructure already in the ground, costing money to maintain, generating zero income. 3 problems, and each one fixed was a lever to pull the net operating income up. Farad, and the seller An elderly local man who had owned the park for almost 30 years and managed it himself casually from a notebook. He had never raised a lot rent because he knew the residents personally and did not want the conflict. He had let the vacant lots sit. He had held onto the aging park, owned homes out of inertia. He owned the park free and clear with no debt. A seller with no loan has no bank forcing his timing, so he could be patient on price, but he was genuinely done with the daily work. A motivated, time-driven seller handing over a property full of fixable, self-inflicted problems. That is the ideal setup. That's fine. Now, the money. Because every deal, at its core, is a capital stack puzzle. Let's walk it from the bottom up. Fi. Total project cost, the purchase price, closing costs, an infrastructure and turnaround budget, and a reserve was approximately $2.74 million. At the bottom of the stack, a senior acquisition loan-funded $1.55 million, about 72% of the $2.15 million purchase price. 5-year term, interest only for the first 36 months, a rate near 7.75%, a 1% origination fee. Above the loan sat the equity. The two sponsors put in about $120,000 of their own money. And the limited partners, 10 of them on this deal, funded $1.07 million. Of the total equity raised, roughly $450,000 was deliberately held back in cash to fund the turnaround, the road repairs, the vacant lot infill, and the operating reserve. Why interest? Only for the first 3 years. Same logic as any value-add deal. During the turnaround, you do not want spare cash going to pay down loan principal. You want it available for the infrastructure work, the reserve, and the operational ramp. Interest-only financing preserves cash for the value creation phase. The principal gets handled later through the eventual sale or a refinance. The LP investor terms. An 8% preferred return. The limited partners receive the first 8% of annual cash returns on their capital before the sponsors earn $1 of profit. After the pref is satisfied, profit splits 70-30 in favor of the LPs up to a 15% total internal rate of return and 50-50 above it. One feature worth noting, manufactured, housing communities, even neglected ones, usually produce cash flow from day one. There are 68 lots already paying rent the moment you close. So unlike a ground-up deal, the LPs in this deal began receiving real cash distributions within the first few months. And the promote tiers mattered here because the turnaround cleared the 15% hurdle decisively. Why structure it this way? First, the preferred return protects the LPs. They get paid before the sponsors. Second, it aligns the sponsors with the investors because the sponsors only reach their best split once the LPs have done well. Third, it rewards genuine execution. A neglected park does not fix itself. It improves only because someone runs it properly. The promote ensures that if the operators do the hard, unglamorous work, they share fairly in the result. Now, the turnaround itself. And it came down to 4 levers pulled deliberately over 24 months. Lever 1, the lot rent. The lot rent was $255 against a market of $365. The operators did not jump the rent in one brutal move. That would have been both unkind and unwise. They raised it in measured annual steps. A meaningful increase in the first year, another in the second, moving toward market while giving residents clear notice and time to absorb each step. By the end of the hold, lot rent had reached about $340, still slightly below the full market number, deliberately to keep the community competitive and stable. Across 68 resident-owned lots, that increase alone added roughly $69,000 a year of revenue, and because the cost of maintaining the land did not change, nearly all of it became net operating income. Lever 2. The 12 vacant lots. 12 empty pads, each with utility hookups already in the ground, each generating nothing. The operators worked with a manufactured home retailer to bring in new and good quality used homes and place them on those empty lots. Some homes the operators bought and then sold to incoming residents. Some were placed by residents who bought directly, but the goal in every case was the same. Put a resident-owned home on the lot and turn a dead pad into a paying lot rent customer. Filling vacant lots is one of the highest return moves in this asset class because the expensive infrastructure, the roads, the water and sewer lines, the electrical is already built and paid for. Over the 24 months, the operators filled all 12. 12 new lots paying lot rent added roughly another $49,000 a year. Fend. Lever 3, utility bill back. Under the old owner, the park paid the community's water and sewer bills itself and never passed the cost to residents. The operators introduced utility bill-back metering, or fairly allocating water and sewer usage and billing it back to each resident, which is standard practice in well-run communities. This did two things. It recovered a real expense. The park had simply been absorbing roughly $41,000 a year of water and sewer cost. And because residents now saw their own usage, total water consumption across the park actually fell as leaks got reported and waste dropped. Bill-back is not about charging residents more for the sake of it. It is about aligning the cost of a utility with the person using it. Faden, Laben. Lever 4, the 16 park-owned homes. Owning 16 aging homes was the wrong business. Everyone was a stream of repair calls, exactly what this asset class is meant to avoid. So the operators ran a deliberate program to sell those homes to the residents living in them on fair, accessible terms, converting renters of homes into owners of homes. Each sale did three things at once. It put a modest amount of cash in the operator's pocket from the home sale. It eliminated that home's repair burden from the park's expenses. And best of all, it converted a whole unit rental into a resident-owned home paying clean, simple lot rent. Over the hold, the operators sold 13 of the 16 park-owned homes to residents. The park got lighter, simpler, and more profitable with each one. Lied. Now let's add the four levers together, because that is where the value was created. Under the previous owner, the park's net operating income was running at roughly $220,000 a year. That number was low for a reason. Frozen lot rents, 12 dead lots, an absorbed utility bill, and the drag of 16 repair-hungry park-owned homes. Now, walk the levers. The lot rent increase added about $69,000 a year. Filling the 12 vacant lots added about $49,000. The utility bill back recovered about $41,000. And shedding the park-owned homes both removed repair expense and cleaned up the income. Layer it all together, and the stabilized net operating income rose to approximately $460,000 a year. Faden. So the net operating income roughly doubled from about $220,000 to about $460,000 a year. And remember the core formula of commercial real estate: value equals net operating income divided by a capitalization rate. If the NOI doubles and the cap rate holds, the value of the property roughly doubles. But on this deal, something even better happened to the cap rate, and that is the disposition story. Hold the $460,000 number. Everything in the sale flows from it. One more thing happened during the turnaround that does not show up on a single budget line, but mattered. The community itself got better to live in. The gravel road was regraded and the potholes filled. The empty, weed-choked lots became homes with families in them. The entrance got a clean new sign. A fuller, tidier, well-managed community is not just worth more on a spreadsheet, it is more stable. Residents stay longer and lots fill faster. Good operations and a good place to live are the same thing, viewed from two directions. The operators improve the asset and the residents' homes in the same motion. Was Tabend. Now, the exit, because every deal is just paper until you can monetize it. A stabilized, well-run manufactured housing community is a very different asset to sell than the neglected park the operators bought. At month 21, with the noise stabilized, the operators took it to market. And here is the key to the disposition. The buyer pool for manufactured housing communities has changed dramatically. Large, well-capitalized investors and dedicated manufactured housing funds now actively compete to buy stabilized communities, precisely because they have learned what this episode opened with: the low expenses, the stable tenants, the shrinking supply. The operators ran a competitive process through a broker who specialized specifically in manufactured housing communities. The sale. The community sold for $6.05 million to a manufactured housing fund assembling a regional portfolio. Walk the math. Stabilized NORI at sale, approximately $460,000 a year. Sale cap rate, roughly 7.5%. $460,000 divided by 0.075 is about $6.1 million, and the deal closed at 6.05. Now notice the cap rate. The operators bought the park at a higher cap rate because they were buying a neglected, mismanaged, hard-to-finance property. They sold at a sharper one because a stabilized, professionally run community in a sought-after asset class commands it. That is the double reward of a turnaround. You earn the NOI lift through operations, and the market also rewards a better asset with a better cap rate. Higher income, valued on a sharper multiple, compounds the gain. Two things to flag honestly. First, the operators sold into a strong market for manufactured housing communities with cap rates that had compressed as institutional capital discovered the asset class. If that environment had been harsher, the exit cap could have been 8.5% instead of 7.5%, which would have taken $600,000 or more off the sale price. That risk was real, and the operators knew it. Second, they chose to sell rather than refinance and hold a stabilized, cash-flowing community for the long term. They chose to crystallize the gain in a different rate environment. Holding this asset for many years would have been a very reasonable move. Each cycle has its own playbook. Now let's walk who got paid what. Fi. Total equity invested at the start, $1.19 million. 1.0. $7 million from the 10 limited partners, $120,000 from the 2 sponsors. On top of the sale proceeds, the park had been distributing cash throughout the hold. It cash flowed from day one, and roughly $360,000 of cash distributions had already gone to investors over the 24 months. Net sale proceeds available for the equity were about $4.26 million. Add the cash already distributed, and the deal returned a total of roughly $4.62 million to all capital against $1.19 million invested. Walk the waterfall. First, the limited partners are returned their original $1.07 million in capital. Then their 8% preferred return, prorated across the hold, and largely already paid through the interim distributions, on the order of $180,000 in total. The remaining profit flows through the promote tiers, 70-30 to the LPs up to the 15% ERA hurdle, then 50-50 above it. When the math settles, the 10 limited partners collectively walk away with about $3.3 million, including their interim cash, on $1.07 million invested. That is roughly a 3.1 times multiple in 24 months. Fi, and the sponsors. The 2 sponsors put in $120,000 of their own equity and earned their share of the promote on a deal that cleared the 15% hurdle with enormous room to spare. Their total proceeds, their returned co-invest plus the promote, came to roughly $1.32 million, split between the 2 of them. On $120,000 of their own money and 24 months of unglamorous, methodical operational work, the sponsor team earned well over $1 million. That is the reward for being willing to buy the asset class everyone else mocked, and then simply running it like a real business. Dadin. No deal is clean. 3 honest mistakes the operators made on this one. Fun. Mistake 1. The first lot rent increase was correct in size, but poorly communicated, delivered as a brief, formal notice with little explanation. It generated more resident anxiety and more angry phone calls than it needed to. Before the second increase, the operators held a community meeting, explained the road repairs and improvements the rent supported, and gave generous notice. The second increase, identical in size, landed with far less friction. Communication is part of the operation. Mistake 2. The operators budgeted the cost of getting homes onto the 12 vacant lots too optimistically. Site preparation, utility connections, transport, and setup for each home cost meaningfully more than projected, and the vacant lot program ran over budget. On future deals, the team now gets firm. Itemized quotes for the full cost of placing a home on a lot before underwriting the infill rather than estimating it. Mistake 3. The operators sold 13 of the 16 park-owned homes, but they held the last 3 too long, hoping for a slightly better price. Those 3 homes continued to generate repair calls and management drag right up to the sale, and ultimately sold for little more than they would have a year earlier. The lesson? Once a turnaround line item is clearly the right move, execute it fully and promptly. Do not let a small holdout tail drag on the whole operation. Temmais Sachi. That is the anatomy of a $6 million manufactured housing deal. One neglected 96-lot community in rural Indiana. The asset class, everyone. Mox. 24 months of raising frozen rents fairly, filling dead lots, billing back utilities, and selling homes to the families living in them. Net operating income doubled. 10 investors made roughly 3 times their money. 2 sponsors earned well over $1 million. All from a quiet truth that the property nobody wants, run properly, can be one of the most rewarding assets in real estate. Future episodes of this channel will go deeper. We will do larger deals, distressed deals, deals that failed, deals in other markets and other asset classes with other capital stacks. But the structure of every episode will be the same. We open the deal. We show you every number. We name every mistake. Anatomy of the deal. If you want to see real numbers on real deals, subscribe. We are just getting started. Hi.